First of all, just want to say thanks for the invitation. It's awesome to be here. I attended one of these back in 2018, the night before The Last Jedi came out, because I remember I drove up with my daughter and we went and saw it in the theater that night. And there was a snowstorm, and I really wish I could be there in person. I apologize, I can't be. I'm from that region. Originally, I'm from Duluth, and we had a cabin near Solon Springs growing up. So, it's home. Um, anyway, I'm super excited to be here today and able to speak to you about some stuff that I think is really exciting, and also, quite frankly, for someone my age, about 50, kind of scary, right? Because new technology, market shifts potentially, etc. What does it all mean? And hopefully today my talk will alleviate some of anyone who has concerns like I do, about, I'm getting toward the late end of my professional career, and, with all these changes, and also get us excited about mapping again and cartography. So, oh, there we go. Good. We certainly live in interesting times, right? This is a Time magazine, map for advertising from the 1940s or 50s, I believe. And I found this, and I think this really summarizes the situation right now with AI developments and the future of GIS. I'm going to talk. So my background, just for a little background, is in cartography mostly. Obviously, GIS as well. When I say cartography, I'm really thinking GIS, the whole spectrum. I'm In this talk, I'll mostly be emphasizing the visualization aspects of GIS, but obviously AI is going to impact all of it. So when I say cartography, think of GIS. I use those terms probably too interchangeably. But we live in interesting times for cartography. And actually, this got me thinking when I was doing some research on the topic about where we're going with AI. When wasn't it interesting times? And how can we maybe, there's a lot of stuff on Twitter or X or whatever you call it now, and people doomsayers and articles, etc. And a lot of it's true. It is pretty scary technology, but I haven't seen so much contextualizing it in the history of technology. And so that's what I hope to do today before I dive into what I see as several potential paths for how AI will be integrated into GIS. I once had an advisor tell me, prediction is a fool's errand. Humans are really bad at predicting things with any accuracy. So I'll just leave some potential evolutionary paths that it might take, and maybe it won't even take one of those. But these are basically kind of informed by research and just like common sense. But let's go way back, right? So when we think about maps and GIS and spatial thinking and spatial analysis, really when we talk about these things, we have to realize that all of this starts in the human brain, right? Human perception. So we're spatial creatures. We see this world of objective reality and 3D space-time. And maps and GIS are really about making sense of that. And when it comes to mapping, sharing that information with others, so that we have like collective knowledge. We're building collective knowledge. And so, I mean, it really starts when you're young. With every single language in the world uses, prepositions or postpositions to describe the world around them. When you think about it, a preposition like above, over, near, every single one of those is spatial and temporal. And so those are key words. Like, it's how we think. It shapes how we think, because we have this spatial environment around us. And lots of researchers, I put these big fancy book covers up. Honestly, you don't have to read any of them. You can probably get an AI chatbot to summarize them for you in 10 minutes, and it would be more interesting, trust me. But they are really interesting. Researchers have been studying this for decades, about how humans think about space and because it really underpins everything we do in GIS, right? If we don't think spatially, then there's no point mapping it or analyzing it spatially. And we actually invent this in our brains, starting with a kid in a crib looking over the crib at the floor. We get this bird's eye view of our room, and I want that toy over there. Our thinking is shaped by these things. So moving from here, what GIS and mapping is actually historically is humans trying to communicate what we're thinking spatially efficiently. You can do it with words, right? But it's actually often humans in ancient times realized we can do it with words, or we can actually drop pictures that, I mean, this is pretty huge when you think about it. Humans went from thinking, and then we could describe things with words and prepositions, presumably. Maybe that even came later, who knows? But the abstract thought of, hey, how can we actually communicate this? Let's draw pictures that represent symbols, abstract symbols. And actually, the human mind has to evolve. And as kids, we learn to read maps. I don't know how many of you have children, and it's none of my business anyway, but I have two daughters who really aren't as interested in maps as I am. I can't believe it. And the look of confusion at times when I give them a paper map or they need to use a highway map in particular is a little bit disturbing to me, quite disturbing actually. But they weren't raised with those, so it's kind of a foreign language to them. They're used to Google Maps. They're used to the map rotating in the direction they're moving at all times. North, and obviously they're smart enough and astute enough with wall maps to know north is normally at the top, but they don't expect that. So we learn to read these, and I think we forget that. These ancient maps, these are from Babylon. They were mapping really interesting things. Another cool thing about maps is we, as the getting to the Google Maps bit, which I'll refer to again, what we map and how we map changes with technology. Technology actually guides how GIS and visual communication, spatial communication work. So these ancient clay tablets were huge breakthroughs in ancient Babylon. This was like the iPad of ancient Babylon, or the AI, if you will. You could now draw pictures and carve pictures into clay tablets, which were portable. So they were mobile clay tablets. These maps weren't, stuck on a cave wall anymore. This was a huge technological breakthrough. Another neat thing, and kind of going off tangent, is what humans are interested in mapping changes with time. So, and we're going to hit this big, but you'll notice that the Babylonian map, I wouldn't say it's, it's not really geodesic, I guess. But what you could say is Babylon's at the center, because that was the most important thing. And it's kind of references, near, far, again, communicating key aspects. And then, as is typical with humans, when you don't know something, you kind of make something up. We'll get back to that with AI. We call it hallucination with AI, but humans are really good at it too. So they just surround the whole map with an ocean and say there's some islands out there. That's a good way to do it. Over time, it turns out that, mapping things can be really useful, and not just for everyday kumbaya situations, but also for organizing. If you're someone in power, knowing where things are, knowing your territory and accurately is really useful. So as the technologies change, and as like surveying comes to the fore, surveying capabilities and mathematics are developed, Newton invents calculus, that probably helped. Suddenly people in organized society start using maps and working on different visualization techniques to better represent territory, better than the Babylonians, more accurately represent. This is a map made by the Cassini family in France. They were commissioned, it took like over 100 years to map and survey and map France in detail for, I think it was King Louis, whatever number, I'm sorry to any French files out there, Francophiles, but basically they mapped all of France in exquisite detail way back when. And actually, if you go to the IGN website, I don't know if this is hyperlinked or not. It might be. We'll see. This looks promising. Skip verification. Let's see. Is it going to work? France, their websites are a little slow, I guess, today. So what's fascinating about these maps is they're so accurate that they can be overlaid with Google Maps today, right? So, I mean, this is, and since it's France, they won't do Google Maps probably, but so you can literally overlay it, and the IGN website has placed these France. These were all surveyed and hand-drawn in the 1600s. But what I'm getting at here is that this gives you great political power, and suddenly leaders and societies realized, hey, cartography can be used for more than just helping us get from A to B. We can use it for defense. We can use it for attacking. We can use it for, well, we'll get there, but for a variety of different things. The next huge step and cartographic technology and thinking and GIS thinking was, okay, we know where, mountains are and rivers, that's great. But a huge leap, and this is actually, I think it's often understated, is that humans suddenly said, hey, can we visualize things that are kind of invisible? And this gets to data, right? Like it's not necessarily invisible. We feel wind. But think about this, Edmund Halley back in the late 1600s, early 1700s, he's like, hey, like maybe we could measure and map, somehow visualize over space wind speeds or ocean currents. And so suddenly humans took the map to the next step. Instead of just showing where locations are or mountains, they started to measure and add measurements and data. And I call it invisible natural data because it's not data that you have to go and measure it, right? And it's a kind of a leap to say, I'm going to measure this data and then try to visualize it on a map. That was a huge breakthrough. And ironically, it was Edmund Halley, the guy that had the comet that came in the 80s that I missed because I was too tired to go out and see it as a kid. He's the one who started thematic mapping. He started mapping. Generally, they mapped things they could measure that were in the environment. River speed, wind speed, ocean currents, elevation of mountains, etc. But this is the start of thematic mapping. It was taking this abstract notion of we can measure things like economic things, for example. So we can measure trade and put it on a map somehow. We have to visualize it. Joseph Menard, officially Charles Joseph Menard, but he's known as Joey Menard to me. He was a French engineer who just designed amazing flow maps back in the 1800s. And most people have been, not most, but many people have been exposed to Tufte's books, Edward Tufte, who designs visualizing, information. He always refers to one of Joseph Menard's Napoleon maps, which is nice and it's pretty technical, but I'd actually say it's not my favorite of his. These are flow maps of, this one here is of cotton trade before and during the Civil War. So obviously cotton trade is impacted by the Civil War. So just beautiful flow maps that we still have trouble mimicking in GRACE today. But what I'm getting at here is it went from mapping natural invisible data to mapping human data. The other big breakthrough, of course, was that with the rise of democracy, the US government and then the French government and a series of others, censuses became the norm. And before that time, censuses might be conducted, but the data was kind of kept in a keep in a castle. I don't know, people did with it. But once census data became available, suddenly people realized, hey, we can start mapping information about people. This is trade information, that's economic, and this came 80 years later. But census information moved it from just mapping natural elements and physical geography to, hey, we can actually start understanding people and trying to analyze how that changes across space. So enter the 20th century and we're mapping people, places, things, physical geography. And then my background actually, when I was a professor. So before coming to Esri, I was a professor throughout Wisconsin, really pretty much River Falls. I wasn't a professor there, but worked at River Falls, UW-La Crosse, and UW-Madison. And my research area focus back then was on propaganda mapping. And one thing about propaganda maps is, and we still see this today as people talk about truth and ethics and mapping, is like, what is truth? What's real information? What's misinformation? Maps are a form of communication. You're trying to communicate your perspective of the world to other people. And generally, when you're communicating, you want to persuade people. So when I communicate with my wife about where we want to eat this weekend, I'm trying to persuade her to go to the Thai joint because I'm kind of sick of the, I don't know, Chipotle or whatnot. As you can tell, we have pretty lowbrow tastes. So, all communication is somewhat, about persuasion. You're trying to get people to see the world your way, and hopefully, it works out for both of you. And you can do so diligently. Maps become a big tool leading into World War II and post-World War II and trying to social engineer whole societies. Maps are really effective at shaping, or some people would say distorting, others' view of the world. And so this is one of my favorite maps ever. I actually wrote a paper about it being my favorite map. It's not a great paper, but if you want the history of it, Red China, it came out in Time magazine, 1950 or something. And I just love this map because really it's saying it's just a reference map, right? It's mapping where, communist China is. But when you look at it and start analyzing, you realize it's meant to scare and galvanize the US public, and maybe rightfully so. I'm not passing judgment on that. But down at the bottom, you'll see the Taiwan and the US flag and Japan. And notice how the globe looks like it's spinning, about to crush you. And I just love the Himalayan mountains up here. They look like a giant bear or fox trap, like it's just ready to clamp down. Just an amazing piece. But the Germans, the Russians, the U.S., every country started using maps to try to galvanize public opinion and shape perspective. So the takeaway here, you're right, we haven't talked about AI yet, and we're 15 minutes in. Oh my gosh. Well, it's pretty important here. What I want you to take away from this is that how we perceive the world and how we communicate it are not independent of technology. Right? So it's constantly changing. Originally, maps, were just like, hey, here's my village on a cave wall. Then it was like, hey, we have mobile maps. Here's Babylon and the next place. And then we get to, mapping our country in great detail so we can defend it at all costs for king and country or whatever. And then we evolved to, hey, we could map kind of like this data we're measuring, and it's kind of abstract, right? I could look at a table of wind speeds from every weather station, but there must be a better way to communicate this. And then we go to mapping people, and then we go to using maps as media to try to shape people's perspective of the world. Wow. So let's get up to modern time here. I just love this slide only because it's so heinous. It is an ugly slide, but this was cutting edge in the 80s. Okay, so that cracks me up. 40 years ago, this was cutting edge, and I like this whole idea of principles and prospects of computer-assisted cartography, not computer cartography, even assisted. And that kind of reminds me of AI-assisted cartography today, right? We're like, oh yeah, it'll always be an assistant. The idea that the prospects, you had to well, will it work or not, really cracks me up. But this is kind of where we are with AI technology today. We're talking about it like, oh, we don't know what it's going to evolve into. But if we look at history, we'll see that we didn't know what this kind of punch card and these kinds of computer digital cartography was going to evolve into. And I would say that we really couldn't predict it. It's much more advanced than we could have predicted back then even. And then let's look at how quickly our expectations have changed. That was the 80s. Then the 90s. Probably most of us remember the AOL CD-ROMs, but I decided to go with the old floppy disk here because CD-ROM drives really didn't take off until a little bit later, after the 90s. But in 1994, January 1st, Bill Clinton basically opened up and maybe Al Gore, I've heard, opened up the internet to the public, and AOL was born, etc. And so the internet's only been around 30 years. And it's pretty amazing when you go back with these screenshots to think about how quickly it's changed in 30 years and how we couldn't survive with the old internet today, the old dial-up. Freehand 7, I don't know how many of you use this, but it was in computer labs around the time of using Adresi and ArcInfo, and if you went to college and were in those labs. I found an interesting thing here. This was a cutting edge graphic design software, right? Freehand 7, I found an interesting quote from a marketing thing for this from MapArt, which was a big company back then. And the head of MapArt was saying, this saves us hours. In the past, when we changed a map symbol, we'd have to go in individually and change each symbol on the map, taking hours. And with this, you can change 1,000 symbols in 3 minutes, So think about that. In 1996, with digital cartography, we couldn't change all the point symbols at once, right? This was a huge cutting breakthrough. 1998, Microsoft Terra Server. I like to think of this as the greatest missed opportunity in Microsoft's history. It wasn't all their other missed opportunities like the Zune. It was probably this. They invented Google Earth in 1998, but typical Microsoft, they were interested in using it to test their database software. And so they shut it down. They had Terra Server. I remember when I worked at ARDC, Arrowhead Regional Development Commission in 1999, I'd be on this thing for hours looking at Hungary. It mapped the whole world. It took all this aerial photography, and the whole world was mapped. It was sluggish as heck on the modems back then, but they did it, and then they closed it down after they proved their database worked. In 2000, you got animation with Flash. And how quickly we forget, right? Remember Flash? That was, anyway. Since 2005, so the last 20 years, rapid change. We all think Google Maps, oh, wow, it's always been this awesome. No, it really wasn't. In 2005, it was revolutionary, no doubt. But I want you to look at the screen capture here of Google Maps in 2005. Remember those panhandles? Remember, like the interface design, etc.? Google Maps has evolved tremendously, as all software does, but how soon we forget, right? Google Maps was amazing, and really immediately, I remember being I was doing my PhD at the time at Minnesota, and I'll never forget a younger grad student running in, and he's like, Ian, look, like I can make a map with just code. And he was like doing KML, and he was trying to learn it, desperately. And he's like, this changes everything. And of course I was terrified because I was already old school. I'd learned Flash. But what really changed stuff was the smartphone. 2007, the iPhone comes out, and they add Google Earth to the iPhone. We forget that the iPhone didn't have an app store, so it came with the apps that were on it. It was mostly used as a phone, honestly, which is crazy by today's standards. And it happened to come with Google Earth. And Google Earth, of course, suddenly, if you only have 6 apps, Google Earth is pretty darn interesting. And that actually really showed the potential for maps on smartphones and mobile devices, and from there it blew up. Then we get into smart assistants, and then ChatGPT comes out in December 2022, and that really changed everything. Suddenly we have this new era called the AI era. And obviously this slide is dated as of 3 days ago because Siri and ChatGPT have now synergized. So it's amazing how quickly technology is changing. So the point of this is that since 1980, when we were talking about the prospects and potential of computer-assisted cartography, we've gone full cyborg. What's cyborg mean? If anyone's watched Star Trek and you've seen the Borgs, we're almost there. Basically, humans have become very dependent on their technology for mapping and getting around. And, it only took 40 years. So I want people to pause for a second and say, okay, yeah, 40 years, that's a long time. But, we've gone from crappy static maps 25 years ago to, what we have today. Where are we going to be in 25 years with AI? And that's the big question. Humans have become fully dependent upon the digital and internet technology. And I throw some articles up here just to get you thinking. But basically, if a solar storm hits, the economy will probably shut down. They're saying for up to 5 to 10 years. It's not if it hits, it's really if it hits the US. It's not when it hits, because we're due for another big solar flare. In the 1800s, it shut down telegraphs and stuff for weeks. Today, it would fry like a bunch of our, Anyway, there's some good articles out there if you want to get scared. The other interesting issue is how dependent we are upon GPS technology. So yes, we have cell phone towers to help us wayfind, but actually the Space Force, which was laughed at a lot, is pretty important because China and Russia have built space military capabilities, and they could take GPS out in a second. And try to imagine your life without GPS, or maybe I should ask an Amazon driver that. But the whole US economy could shut down. We're very dependent upon technology, and we're living in a cyborgian society. So my segue here is, what are some of the impacts that AI are going to have, and how can we prepare for them, good and bad? We're not going back to not being dependent upon digital technology. And I would say that AI is going to make us more dependent by far already. Quick question, and I can kind of see the room over there, I think. How many of you already use, sorry, your tiny little thing here. You can just raise your hands. How many of you use AI in your GIS day-to-day operations already? Okay, I can only see. And actually, if you do, I wouldn't raise your hand now because you don't want your colleagues to find out why you're so efficient, right? Okay, so, well, you will be. And it's okay. Actually, it's okay to be hesitant about technology. I think it's wise, actually, because if you dive in and don't consider the ethical considerations, that's really important. What I can tell you from speaking to undergrads and some master's students, and also just reading about educators in K-12, the younger generations are using it. And so it's going to become more the norm in the workplace. I know at universities they use it all the time for finding directions, figuring out how to solve lab work, probably writing papers, but that's beyond my pay grade. And in K-12 education, they're starting to use it. And my daughter's used it while researching for a science project. It's faster than Wikipedia and gives you sources so you can go double check. So it's pretty cool. But the main point of this AI is that it's not really that new. It's just been growing wicked fast. So AI, actually, we've been using it for a long time. You're all of us, anyone who's on social media, your beliefs about society, the news you get, it's all shaped by AI. It's been shaped by it for 15 years. So the news feeds you're getting, etc. It's all based on your previous choices and what they know about you. And most of us are aware of this, and we're quite comfortable with it. I like getting news that makes me feel good, or like I'm in the But when it comes to generative AI, it's kind of a game changer, because generative AI isn't about feeding you stuff. It's about creating new content, about creating new data, creating new knowledge. And one caveat I want to put in here is it's based on previous human knowledge. So everyone's like, oh, it's got millions of years of human accumulated knowledge in it. And that's true. But most data that humans have created has come in the last 30 years, right? 30 to 20 years, because we're just creating mass amounts of data. And a lot of that data, one reason I put these social media icons in here, is absolute rubbish, right? So we all know this, the axiom, garbage in, garbage out. Don't forget that AI is fed a lot of garbage. And so that's kind of a problem. Like when you trust AI, think about the fact that it's based on human knowledge. And if you've read the internet, you know that there's a lot of stuff that's garbage out there. So let's quickly go over generative AI. Generative AI, again, is the AI that produces new content, and that content can be text. It can write screenplays. A lot of the Hollywood screenplays are now written by AI with just one editor overseeing it. That writer's strike was great, but basically all they got, they got a lot out of the deal, but what they got was they're still going to use AI to write screenplays, but there has to be one human for each screenplay to check it. But they can produce a lot of screenplays. And then you can also create pictures. All the pictures and images in this, except for the ones of human, most of them, this one, for example, were created with AI with a single sentence prompt. So this picture, I typed in dystopian future in Budapest or something, and with robots, and I got this picture. So that's generative AI. That's DALL-E. So you've probably read about these, probably scared about them like I am. White collar job redundancy. Yeah, a lot of white collar jobs are going to disappear, but that doesn't mean new ones won't be created. So let's call them here for a second. Human creative spirit. Maybe it would have taken me a year to paint this. If I was a good graphic designer, I could never do this. It took DALL-E like 30 seconds. Does that ruin human creativity? Will it be smarter than humans? Verdict's still out. It is smarter than humans. It's smarter than the average human already. So that in everything except math, maybe, but it's pretty much smarter there. They said the next iteration will be smarter than a PhD in physics, and then also smarter at all base levels. So that is going to happen. It's smarter, but it's not smarter in every single way. Like we'll talk about that. Inaccurate, biased, superficial learning. It's true. Just like Wikipedia, there can be inaccurate information. I just said that there's a lot of garbage that goes in. A lot of it will come out. And lack of privacy, death of expertise. Is it going to kill all humans? It might, actually, but that's not what I'm here to talk about. On the flip side, there are some pros. So the pros to white collar job redundancy is more efficiency. So actually, since it's more efficient, there might be new jobs that people can do and that are more creative. There's still a need for creativity. Humans have the ideas. AI can help us get them done quickly and help us achieve our ideas because they can do things that maybe we're not capable of. I'm a horrible coder, and I'll show you an example in a second. Humans can use AI to solve really complex problems. So it's more of an assistant that way. It's faster. You can learn really quickly. My children are figuring out that it can summarize a Wikipedia page pretty well in 2 paragraphs, rather than reading through every Wikipedia page to get their answers for their 8th grade science project. And yeah, I'm a fan of Wikipedia. I know a lot of people hate it, but better access to knowledge, and it actually increases productivity everywhere, except for doing laundry, unfortunately. So really, it's like this. It's an assistant. It's a computer running around doing things for you. GeoAI is already being integrated into Esri products. I have nothing to do with these products, but I don't know. Has anyone here used these GeoAI products, like for remote sensing, et cetera? Any hand up? I'm looking at the screen. All right. So there are some already implemented. It's largely for raster data. It's wicked good and wicked fast at identifying things. I can only imagine what government, federal government and national governments are doing with this. Probably pretty easy to find Cuban Missile bases with AI. Not a problem. That was a reference to the 60s. I'm not saying the Cubans had missiles. Sorry. But anyway, so it's already being implemented in these ways, and it has been for years, actually. They've been developing this well before generative AI, but for finding things. Moving forward, GIS is going to actually, what you're going to see is AI can go two routes now in GIS. And I don't know which one's going to be dominant. It's going to really depend on the users. Esri is very much a user-centered company, and I'm not speaking for Esri right now. I'm speaking more as an academic about AI and GIS. But what I can say is it's going to depend on companies giving the users what they need. So two routes that AI could go, and I think different companies will try at different approaches, is you could have the assistant, like Microsoft's Copilot, embedded in GIS apps. So the assistant can do things really quickly for you. I'm going to look again at the screen. Has anyone here used Microsoft Copilot? Don't be shy. Yeah, cool. Okay. I think you have to pay extra for it. So I've only been able to dabble within it briefly as a trial period, but it does everything. It creates, I didn't use it for this because I don't have it, but you can get it to create a PowerPoint presentation based off your outline. You can get it to automatically reply to your emails that are just kind of rudimentary, etc. You can get it to draft Teams meetings, minutes for you at the end of the meeting because it's listened to everything, kind of creepy, and analyzes the key points. It's really speeding up the process, and it's really easy, pretty intuitive, probably as easy as using Grammarly or something. It's being embedded in every one of their apps. It's powered by ChatGPT, which Microsoft owns a lot of. And I actually see this as a big thing. We'll talk more about it. But assistants embedded in your existing apps are just that. They're there to Copilot, to help you get things done faster, to respond to emails you never wanted to read anyway, saying, yeah, I'll be at that meeting. And it's kind of cool. The other route it can go is just a general spatial AI. Basically, GIS is the AI, and we'll talk about both of these. So AI assistants, what would happen here is basically, I don't see it on here. Do I have to click something? There we go. Okay, I forgot I have to click that button. It'll just be embedded in the software. So if you were using ArcGIS Insights or if you were using Map Viewer, it'll be a little assistant, and you could say, hey, change the color scheme of this, and it would change the color scheme, right? But you'd still have your regular user interface. There's a reason that companies like Microsoft want to go this route, and I'm just going to throw it out there. I've never had any conversations at Esri about this, and I don't know which route they're going to go. But what I can say is, if you're a software company, is it really in your best interest to wipe out the white-collar workforce? No. Why? Because you sell seat licenses or group licenses to companies, right? And if you wipe out the white-collar workforce, this is my hunch on Microsoft anyway, if you don't need as many writers, there's many people with Word and PowerPoint because AI is doing 20 presentations a day for you. You want the assistant, you want the human in the loop because that's where the sales are, right? I mean, as a software company, you have to worry about that. Google doesn't. Google doesn't have to worry about that because Google is selling ads, and so Google is going to embed, AI in Google search. It already is Gemini or whatnot. But the whole point there is they're not selling software to individuals. They're just trying to get it on every computer. So Microsoft and Google may go different routes here, and it'll be interesting to see. When it comes to GIS, I know that Esri's user focused. I have a hunch that Esri will go the AI assistant route because we have so many professionals trained on the software. The goal is to speed them up, not to replace them. That's just a good thing. When it comes to AI assistants, though, you're going to see a bunch of GIS assistants being developed independently. So this is one I actually made for the International Cartographic Association. You can find it. It's free. It's called Map Doctor. You can upload a map image to this GPT. You just need a free account. Search Map Doctor GPT. You upload an image, and it gives you research-focused, trained feedback on how to improve the design. And the reason I created this is I still have former students, et cetera, that'll email me and send me maps and say, hey, can you give me feedback on the design? And I'd love to, and I do. But I was thinking, for all the working professionals out there, why not make an AI assistant that gives them quick and informed feedback based on research and literature? So I trained this at my daughter's swim class for months, actually, be watching people swim laps. But basically, it gives better feedback than I could give 9 out of 10 times. And if nothing else, it allows people in the workplace to get feedback on their maps before they give them to the public and someone says, I'm colorblind, you didn't think of that. Or before your boss says, no, this is horrible. So give it a try if you want. It's not, it makes mistakes, but it's a tool. And the whole goal of AI is to assist, and that's one example. Now, the other route this could all go, of course, is the AI as the new UX. And I think that this is inevitable. What you're going to see in the future is GIS software or just maybe a computer, and you're going to talk to it and you're going to say, I want a map of the United States and a conformal projection that shows, percent poverty by zip code. Boom, and then it'll give you a map. And then you will probably say, I would like the color scheme to be changed to, I don't know, let's say white to fuchsia, just for whatever reason. Boom. I would like the capital cities on there labeled. Boom. That's probably, there's no doubt in my mind, that's the future interface of everything. You're going to be talking and it's going to be doing. And already you can talk to chat GPTs and it does stuff for you. And that's where software is heading. The human will still be in the loop, but the programming language is literally just conversational English. And so that's the new phrase now, that the new coding language is English, and it's very true. You can get a lot done with just conversational English. And of course, this will make things more efficient. And of course, it also means that there'll be changes in the workforce. Now you can train AI using a bunch of different prompts. I'm running out of time, so I'm not going to go into that. What I do want to say is this would be an example. Please load my most recent U.S. university data set, exclude 4-year universities, blah, 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 blah. And it would spit out a map. In fact, ChatGPT can do this. It just doesn't have access to the mapping software, but it can tell you how to do it. If you ask it how to do this, it'll tell you what buttons to hit right now, in what order. Now, of course, this means that increased efficiency, more workflows. But what it also means is that our job as GI scientists is going to change. And actually, change is just part of the game. It's been changing for 30 years. There's going to be more of an emphasis on teaching AI, GIS, to do what you need for your job. So if you work for Bayfield County, teaching it to always use certain projections, teaching it that, we use yellow for our highways. Apologies, I don't know what color you use for your highways. I'm teaching it standardizations. And you'll be teaching it in English. You won't be writing Python or any of that crap. You will be teaching your assistants in English. You could do it in Spanish too. At that point, it won't matter. Right now, it's much better at English than other languages just because the internet's mostly English. The main tasks, though, it'd still be, first of all, humans still have the ideas, still the creativity. You're asking a machine to do things for you. And also, machines make tons of mistakes. We know that, right? You do auto labeling. It's great. It does 90% of the labels on your map. Great. And then the 10% that are absolutely horrible, you'll have to go in and fix those, probably manually or maybe by talking to it and saying, hey, move that Bayfield label to the lower right of the point symbol. You goof. Maybe you'll get all cozy with your AI like in her. I don't know. So creativity will still be important. It's just our jobs are going to change. Now, to largely conclude, I think, ethics and practical considerations. You're going to hear a lot about ethics now that Apple has integrated Siri with ChatGPT. Elon Musk is going apoplectic, but he just hates ChatGPT because he and Sam Altman had a falling out. Also, Elon thinks AI is going to take over the world. He might be right, but privacy, ethical. Right now, I know at Esri, our biggest concern is making sure that the AI is reliable in its answers. That Esri's pouring a ton of resources into this, but Esri is also very worried about users and ethics. So it's not quite as fast as ChatGPT, which is a good thing. Making sure it doesn't like let people make hate maps, etc., those types of things. Making sure that it doesn't use private data, proprietary data, all these things are really important because AI is smarter than a human, and if it gets access to everything, it could really mess with humans. Talk about social engineering. That's a big consideration actually with AI. And I'm happy to talk more about those, but I don't think that's probably as pertinent right now to this audience. And I just stole this from a Radiohead video because it's creepy and kind of weird. Okay, so to wrap up, English prompting will be the new GIS language. Python's still important right now because AI loves Python. So if you know Python, particularly when you're trying to code little functions for your AI tools to run. But in the end, like English prompting and training your AI with English is actually that's going to be the coding language. And I'm watching it behind the scenes, and it's fascinating what it can do. AI will usher in changes for spatial scientists like ourselves, and it will be scary, but actually there's going to be lots of new opportunity. We just have to embrace them and be innovative about what we do with AI. And yeah, the workforce it'll shift, just like it shifted with labels. I don't know if you guys remember, but you used to have to place every label on a base map independently and, use the great thing. And like I said, it's speeding up. No one here, I think, really misses labeling, right? And that's gone now. We didn't all panic. It's just things are changing a lot faster. So just remember, the sky's not falling. And this is just an evolution of how we think about space and how we can represent it. It's speeding it up. It's turbocharging how we visualize space. And now I have some time for questions. Sorry, I went a little long. I apologize. Is this when everyone says that we couldn't hear you the whole time? Let's see, I can't hear anything. I can see my face on the monitor, which is kind of creepy. It's like I'm in two places at once. Okay, now it says you're unmuted.
Yeah, try again.
Okay.
Okay, Ian, this is Jason. I'm a forest figure in Mission County. I'm not primarily a GIS specialist. What should be, there were not a lot of hands in the room when you asked the question, how many of you are using, I don't know how you phrase it, AI and you're kind of getting where should we start? What's low hanging fruit and especially kind of bent curve toward
No.
Can you give us a couple of, you should do this, give, a couple of things. Start with that. I wrote down your map document tool. That sounds awesome. Do you have anything else?
Yeah, so that's one, obviously, that was a selfish promotion. I did that for a nonprofit org. I'm on a commission there. We're supposed to promote map design. I was like, how better to promote map design than feed it all? I fed it all my lecture notes, all of my notes from my dissertation on all these different papers, all these open resources, research stuff. And I'm like, now anyone can at least get some feedback. It's like I said, better than mine most of the time. So sometimes it's wrong. You got to use your brain, but that's but what I would say is actually what's funny. This is a great question. I was at my daughter's swim lesson and I didn't know much about AI, and I knew I was being shifted to an AI team. And so I went to OpenAI, ChatGPT, and it scared me. I heard that it makes pictures and all this stuff. And it was in there while goofing around for free. I realized, if I pay $20 a month, I can create my own. And then I was thinking, well, heck, why don't I see if that's when I came up with the idea. Wouldn't it be cool if someone uploaded a map and it gave pretty good feedback? I've got all these notes. And so I created that. But you don't have to do that. You can do it for free now. You can go to ChatGPT and just ask it questions, and you'll be shocked at what it can answer. Or Gemini, Google Gemini has one. And I'm going to share my screen again really quickly. I know we're a little short on time, so I apologize. That's my fault. I tend to get over garrulous with coffee. Where is it? So this is an example of ChatGPT, and I don't know, some of you might be GIS programmers. I'm a hack. Like I said, I'm a cartographer that learned Flash. But I needed to get some REST API, Esri ArcGIS REST APIs written to answer certain questions. I go to ChatGPT and I type in, can you write a REST API to answer counties with more than 25 wolf sightings? It was some DNR data from Minnesota or Wisconsin. I forget I was playing with. And it spits it out. And then I can go test it. Sometimes it doesn't do it quite right, but I can copy paste it in and run it. And 95% of the time, it writes all the Python you need for ArcGIS API for Python, all this coding. Now, if I spent my career learning coding, I'd be ticked. I'm a writer. I'm ticked. ChatGPT can write much better than I can, and it's somewhat sad. So a lot of us have studied skills that suddenly like ChatGPT can just do. But that's the negative side. The positive side is this. I know enough Python to be dangerous. I can now get this to draft the Python for me, and I can tweak it to work. Writing this from scratch would have taken me hours. I'm just not there. And now I can do so much more at work, right? Like I could write my own ArcPy scripts by playing with this. And this is just the free version of ChatGPT. So that's what I'd say is start experimenting with it that way. Because I guarantee you college students and the K-12 kids, they are, and they're the ones coming up to replace us. So I'm not, I look at my daughters and I'm like, this isn't fair, like, so, things like that. It's really, really useful. And the more you experiment, I think the less scared you get because you realize it's kind of, it's a someone who spent their life learning Python but wasn't very good at writing because they weren't interested in English or it was difficult for them. Like my daughter, who may have dyslexia, for example. This is great. Like it levels the playing field in areas where we're weaker or where we weren't, and it allows us to do more. Sorry, I hope that kind of answers your question.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Yeah. And my daughters were using it to learn about like physical science. I think forestry was one of them. So, there you go. Like it's good that way, Anyone else? I know it was kind of like theory heavy for this early in the morning and there's probably coffee outside. So.
Well, thank you so much, Ian.
Yeah, anytime. If you have any questions or if you're totally spooked, reach out. You're going to read a lot of stuff. It is scary. It's a big change, just like the internet changed everything. We just don't know where it's going to go, but it's probably not going to kill us all. So it's going to be beneficial.
I have a question for you, Ian.
Yeah.
This is Tom Muehlenhaus. I work with the EPA here in Duluth. Hey, and so far in EPA, we're not allowed to use generative AI.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just curious how Esri is working with government partners that have some limitations via presidential executive orders and so forth, limiting the access we have to AI while they're still building in all these AI tools.
Yeah, no, trust me, I actually don't trust me because I'm not way above my pay grade. The federal government is definitely a huge customer. And I would say if there's one company I'm proud to be working at right now, it's Esri. We're not pushing it like the other places in the sense that probably because we're not it's owned by Jack and Laura Dangerman. There are no shareholders saying, you need to do this now and increase profits. So we're being very careful and respectful. And maybe some people will be like, why aren't you pushing this out faster? But the ethics, the dangers of AI, getting access to data, once it learns something, it doesn't forget, so that's a danger. So to answer your question, I know that they're concerned about that and they're not going to embed it in everything. Or you're going to have to, probably it'll be a different licensing structure. I don't think that's even decided yet. We're just trying to figure out how to make it work for the average user to help them speed processes right now. So I hope that answers your question. That's a really good question, and that gets to the ethics and also the law. The law is going to have to change a lot because, right now there are lawsuits with ChatGPT. Like, is this plagiarism? I would argue no. Like, if I studied Python, I don't have to cite every book I ever read on Python when I write Python. And this is an intelligent agent. It's different than any tool that came before because it learns and it gets smarter. And it has agency. It can literally think like it's learning on its own, and we've never had a tool like that. So that's what makes it different. But yeah, federal government, I'm glad the federal government's taking it slowly too.
Thanks. That is informative. I appreciate it.
Yeah. We're not allowed to use it at work either. That's the irony. So we're very scared about it stealing all of our proprietary, well, I'm not, but obviously the higher ups are, about it stealing all of our proprietary code accidentally, and then it's out there, right? You know, and it actually can't forget it, you know. So it is a danger when you implement it. Everything I showed you, like, was actually done on my personal computer. The map doctor was done at the pool on my personal computer, not on a work computer. The slide I just showed you with the REST API scripts, that was done on my personal computer and just screenshot and shared a link. So yeah. Any other questions? Hey, I really appreciate your time. Thank you for having me back. And maybe in 10 years, I'll be proven wrong. Maybe I can give a talk about how dumb I was, but that'd be fun too. Hopefully, you know, you can never predict the future. So.
All right. Well, thank you so much for all these insights and things for us to think about.
Yeah, thank you all. And yeah, thanks. Sorry I couldn't be there. Enjoy the donuts and coffee.
Okay.
Thanks. Bye.